we are going to continue on our presentations here tonight. Next up is Gilbert. Gilbert Sebenste. Are you ready to go, Gilbert?
I am ready to go. Let's do this. All right. Sorry about the delay, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate you joining me and all of you joining me for that matter. I've been a rail fan now for about a dozen years, and one of the things that I like to do is, besides going out and watching trains, is shooting them. But I'm kind of a night owl. If you know me, staying up late is a good thing for me. But one of the challenges I had, of course, was that, well, without a flash, you're somewhat limited in what you can do in terms of shooting at night. You can get a lot of stuff, but you can't get everything. So what I decided to do after talking with these three people who have mentored me along the way, Steve Rubeck on the left, Jason Leverton in the middle, and Gary Morgan, who is a noted night photographer in Northern Illinois. They all got me not only into still photography, but also, especially with Gary, got me into night photography. And I'm greatly indebted to all these men for influencing me and starting up my desire and interest in railroad photography. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about my equipment. I first started with a point and shoot and wasn't really happy with that. I eventually upgraded to a Canon 20D, then a Canon T3i, and I now use a Canon 6 as my go-to camera. I currently use 8 Yongnuo flashes. Usually 5 or 6 are sufficient for the shots that I do, but they are limited to 300 feet and they have to be line of sight. So if the train is blocking it, it won't go off. So with those challenges, nevertheless, I think I've advanced my photography to the point where I've started to like some of my images, and I hope you do too. All right, well, let's get started this evening. And sometimes, like I said, you don't need a lot of light or strobes to get a shot. Sometimes a long exposure is all you need. Here we are at Mendota, Illinois. This was about 8 years ago now, as a thunderstorm was approaching the yard there. For those of you who are familiar, the Amtrak and BNSF Mendota sub is off on the right there, as well as the Amtrak station. But the local at this time was BN 3148. And with the lightning bolt in the background, I thought it made for a pretty interesting shot. All right, let's move on here. Again, sometimes a flash or a strobe is not needed to light up anything. Sometimes you just let the atmosphere do it for you. Here, a departing thunderstorm, silhouettes or backlights the signals here just east of Cortland, Illinois, on the Union Pacific Geneva subdivision. It was really tough getting this shot because I knew the signal on the left was going to get overexposed. But if there was going to be some lightning, I didn't want to overexpose that or underexpose that either. So by holding the shutter button down for 3 seconds and I just kept doing that, all of a sudden this flash happened, and I managed to get a pretty nice shot out of it. So sometimes the train is, or the railroad is secondary to what's happening here. And last summer we had a comet that danced across the United States at night, and it was very difficult to see. But with my T3i here near Earlville, Illinois, on the BNSF Mendota sub, I managed to catch it. It's really difficult with all the light pollution across our area to get a good clean shot of a comet or northern lights, but this one came out pretty well, I would say. Again, you're looking northwest here from near Earlville. Sometimes you get surprised. I love the northern lights. I love shooting them, and I watch conditions carefully when there's a chance of them. I'm actually a little bit excited that we have some big sunspots on the sun right now that are starting to rotate on the Earth-facing side of the sun, which could give us strong flares later on this week. And one such flare in 2018 decided to dance above the old Chicago, Michigan, and Gary line, or the roadbed at least, off in the distance. And this was incredible. I mean, I thought I would only see this if I went to Alaska. I took a 20-second exposure on my Canon 20D, looked in the viewfinder, and literally let out a yell at about 11:30 at night. Thankfully, the farmer was asleep, and I don't think he heard me. But nevertheless, that was just a phenomenal night. And like I said, sometimes if you just get railroad roadbeds or tracks or objects in a shot, even if it's not the main focus of the photograph, it can still make a very pleasing picture, as this does. When I first started, all I had was my onboard camera. I really wish during the years during the Iowa, Chicago, and Eastern, and Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern, when they were roaming across Northern Illinois on what is now the Canadian Pacific Chicago subdivision, that I had more strobes, but sometimes you just have to make do. And sometimes all you need is one flash. And especially during the blue hour after the sun goes down, sometimes all you need is just one. And here we have the Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern 6054 with a 272 job heading westbound through Genoa, Illinois. Those on SD40-2s largely went to the Rapid City Pierre and Eastern. They bought out a lot of them. I can't recall if these were or not, but nevertheless, the SD40-2s are a site that I will miss not having here on a regular basis on the CP Chicago sub. Sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get. I was watching ATCS monitor on this evening about 9 years ago, and the temperature is hovering right around 5 below zero. So that made conditions quite a challenge. And I heard somewhere on the CN Freeport subdivision, and somewhere out in Iowa, actually farther west on the Dubuque and Waterloo subdivisions, they were going to send a plow train out after a snowstorm, and drifts caused 1 to 2 foot drifts over the tracks in some locations. Well, it was canceled, then it was scheduled, then it was canceled. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But this night I went out to the tracks. I saw it coming. I'm like, I want to take a night shot of a train. I'm bored. Well, all of a sudden I see the train coming, but there's only one set of headlights. And I'm like, what's going on? This is so weird. And he's approaching a street, so he needs to have his ditch lights on, but they weren't coming on. So I hit my camera, and I heard a whiz, and then I heard the engines go by, and I'm like, what in the world? Well, I was totally surprised to see that a Chicago Central and Pacific snowplow was leading the M338 job on the Canadian National job that night. It's the only time I've gotten it in use, but nevertheless, that was quite the sight to see. And again, that was just one flash on camera, setting of about 1/60th of a second, and ISO setting at 1600 here. And sometimes getting 3 or 4 strobes is all you need for a very interesting shot. Shooting Chicago is Chicago's train scene is always interesting. And on the last night before the Pensy CPLs came down, you can see the yellow tape around them. They were going to come down about 3 hours after the shot was taken. But nevertheless, a Metroscoot heads underneath them for the final time against an amazing city backdrop. So pretty neat. So four strobes here, 1 lighting up the engine, 3 lighting up the cars and getting them to reflect a little bit more made for an interesting scene here. You can sue me for this shot. Oh boy. This is in Hampshire, Illinois, again on the Canadian Pacific Chicago subdivision. I heard that this guy was running a local from Savannah all the way out to Pingree Grove, Illinois to pick up one car. And I knew that the Sioux engine was one of the last ones out there still in service in its original paint. And I knew it was going to be coming back with at least 1 or 2 or 3 cars. But in this case, it was just 1 car and 6 flashes or 6 strobes rather lit up this scene very nicely. So 4412 West at Hampshire, Illinois, heading back to Savannah for interchange with the rest of the CP. Shooting night shots in fog is cool. And then when you add hoarfrost, like we had 2 years ago in Northern Illinois, we had a meteorologically significant event where we had hoarfrost and ice build up, rime ice build up on the trees for 5 days. It actually got so heavy, in fact, that on the last day, trees started to come down. So on the Canadian National Freeport subdivision, again, we're at Burlington, Illinois. I had to drive slow because the visibility was literally about a city block, if that. And rime ice was again thickening up on the trees. And CN's M338 happened to have a very colorful KCS SD40 here, SD70 here, heading eastbound here at Burlington, Illinois. Sometimes you get a shot and you just go, this is cool. I like this. I like what I'm doing. What can I say? Again, I got word on a Sunday evening during a heavy snowstorm that the CN M338 job once again had some interesting power on it. A BC Rail, a CAL unit, 4602, and I was thinking, you know, this would be really interesting to get in the snow. So I went up to Genoa, Illinois, and the depot, the old depot, is right behind me. But with 4 inches down, or excuse me, 6 inches down and 2 more to go in heavy snow, this is destined for, this is a G888 symbol grain job heading eastbound, bound for the NS, to be interchanged with the NS here at Genoa, Illinois on a very snowy Sunday evening. And getting the pines covered in snow and just getting it with the snow coming down hard is just really neat. I've learned as a meteorologist by trade that the worse the weather at night, the better the potential for shots if you know what you're doing. And this was certainly the case this evening. And again, sometimes all you need is dense, thick fog to make things very interesting. We're at Rondout, Illinois here, and you just saw a picture a little while ago from there. What happens when you douse the scene in fog and you get creepy trees that are bare of leaves and dead behind the train? Well, makes for a very interesting effect, especially when you have a puddle in front, which reflects the light oh so well. Here we see, actually, this is a CN job northbound. He's about to go into the yard to pick up a couple of cars and interchange with the Canadian Pacific. With the, if you look carefully there, the conductor is on the 3-point right in front there on the stairs, getting ready to step off and throw the switch to go into the yard. Here again is a case where no lights needed. You just use your ambient light and get some fog, and you get an interesting scene here. You can't shoot this scene anymore. This is at Rochelle, Illinois, at the Rochelle, Illinois Railroad Park. This is really cool. We've obviously got something coming westbound. You're looking west here on track 2, but you can't get this shot anymore because that has been replaced with a that's been replaced with a cantilever. The wonderful poles on the right are now gone as well. And there is now a fence on the right side, which really detracts from getting a clean shot here. So I was very grateful to get it while I still could. Ever go out just to shoot a train and all of a sudden you get something that nobody told you about and you didn't know what was coming, and it turned out to be something really cool? Well, here we are at the Rochelle Railroad Park again, and you can see the replacement cantilever there in the background for the old searchlights that are about to come down. I came here to light up a few trains. I got one, which was just a regular old UP train with some dirty aces on it. And then I got this as the second train out. I had no idea this was coming. But here UP 9013 leads an officer car special. And I found out later that the UP president was on board this somewhere in the back there on a nice warm summer evening. Also at the Rochelle Railroad Park, after heavy rains the day before, I managed to go trackside. And on one side of the tracks, there was a big puddle, and I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing here. And so as UP 4771 heads into Global 3 slowly, it moves slowly enough not to cause vibrations in the water, which let me get a pretty much mirror image of what you see there in the top half of the screen. So with the, again, the poles in the background, I thought that was very, very nice as well. Sometimes railroaders work in pretty bad conditions. How about this? Let's go to the Mississippi River and Davenport, Iowa. A couple of years ago when they had record flooding, which a few days after this shot was taken, the dike broke and it flooded the entire downtown area. But Canadian Pacific was bound determined come hell or high water, and they got both to run trains through this thing. These engines made it, but a subsequent train that tried to go through lost their traction motors and had $100,000 worth of damage. But nevertheless, it creeps through a very precarious sandbagged tracked area as it plods slowly across and next to the Mississippi River. And if you look closely on the far left side of the photograph, you can see ducks there as well, trying to get out of the way and probably wondering what in the world were they thinking when they were doing this. And again, sometimes you just use flashes to get an assist. And during the blue hour, what we see here is the Canadian National M337 job going by the depot at Galena, Illinois. And it just so happened they had a couple of NS engines on the point, one of them being the so-called Bumblebee, the Virginian Heritage Unit coming through. And I had 6 strobes for this, 5 on the one pointing at the train off to the right, camera right, 4 on camera left, and then there's one. I don't think you can see it. I tried to hide it, and I think I did a good job of doing that, which lit up the building to the right of the lead engine. So that was pretty cool. Okay, we're just going to say America on this one. This is in the little bustling community of Irene, Illinois, about 10 miles southeast of Rockford, Illinois. Again, the Canadian National M338 job occasionally has some great power, and this night was no exception. People were chasing this all the way from Waterloo, Iowa to its termination in Gary, Indiana. And we're at obviously here, I can't remember. Yeah, that's Stone Quarry and Flora Church Road. I'm at the junction there as 338 passes by the old coal line poles and the big power poles as well, again in Irene. Now, a few of you might have heard of this railroad called the Chicago and Northwestern, but nevertheless, on one of the last times that CN 8646 was used before it was repainted, I got underneath the coal chute at DeKalb, Illinois. At the time, I just had 3 flashes, and I had my old 20D camera. It was a little bit on the noisy side with the photo, but nevertheless, it's one of the few pictures that I've seen of a train at night going underneath that coal chute with true Northwestern power in the lead. One of the things that I like to do as much as possible, and you've probably seen this by now, is if you just shoot a train at night, okay. But if you include other objects, it makes the photograph more interesting here. And so we're just east of Genoa, Illinois, and the Canadian Pacific 473 job here is heading eastbound past a grain elevator, and this time it's got a ferromix unit leading. Pretty neat. Excuse me, a 472 job of the CP, my bad. But nevertheless, this is really cool. And the stuff you can do is amazing. Before media got replaced, I tried to get down there before they started work to replace the bridge with concrete pylons, but I didn't make it in time. But nevertheless, with 6 strobes, I wanted to get at least a few shots of a train going over it. And I did get this one successfully here. Here's a Z train flying, and I mean flying, over that soon to be replaced, I think it was nearly 80-year-old bridge down by Media, Illinois, southwest of Galesburg. All right, so this is where a number of you people turn off your computers in utter disgust. But yes, sorry, Brewer fans, but the Cubs did win the World Series in 2018, and yep, the Railroaders were excited about that too. Here we are, and the name of the town is escaping me right now. I'll get in a second here, but this is the Illinois Railway. It's the former CB&Q line, which runs from Eola, Illinois, down to Ottawa, Illinois. And here it's passing by the Calico Cafe and a grain elevator with engineer Matt Spica, a diehard Cubs fan, doing the shots. And by the way, the Calico Cafe is a fan of my photos. They saw it, printed out a picture of it, and it hangs in the cafe to this day. All right. What do you do on New Year's Eve at 11 p.m. when you get a call from your engineer friend and he says, "You're not going to believe what I have for power"? Well, about 11:13 p.m., and I remember that because that's when he called me about this. I excused myself from a party up in Rockford, Illinois. We had just celebrated the East Coast New Year's Eve, so I'm like, all right, whatever. It looks like everybody was leaving and winding down anyway, so I left and I boogied it to Yorkville, Illinois. And I crossed, I think, the Ogle and DeKalb County line at midnight, and I made it to Yorkville about 1 a.m. And then about an hour later, Mr. Matt Spica, running Illinois Central 1026, was leading his westbound empty sand train back through Yorkville, Illinois. Matt is no longer with the IR. The 1026 has been repainted. The Yorkville sign has been taken down, and somebody's got it. I don't know who. And if you look very carefully to the right of the lead engine, you can see an old caboose. That was a BN caboose that was sold for $5,000, and I have no idea where it went to. During the severe flooding along the Mississippi River several years ago, not only did we have CP getting in on shenanigans, but we also had Amtrak being seriously affected. So here's UP 4968 with a detoured Southwest Chief, and it is going underneath the DeKalb coal chute. Now, the way this works, if it doesn't have a UP engine on the point, it can't lead. So they put a pilot engine up on front. And Mike, I know you know Jason Leverton. He is on board. He's on the car, I think third from the back. So I let him and the entire scene up as well. Down in Ottawa, Illinois, the old Rock Island line, now owned by the Iowa Interstate, has an old clock factory that I wanted to light up. And one night I got word that Iowa Interstate's 513, the Rock Island Heritage Unit, was going to lead a consist. So I'm like, I'm going to light this up and see how it looks. I don't think it turned out half bad, but here it is. With the CBBI, let's see, yes, CBBI job, passing through Otto, Illinois, again with Iowa Interstate 513 in the lead. Here we are at the Illinois Railway Museum. 0 lights needed except for the street light, which illuminated this scene. This is the number 5 here being put to bed. And with just a little bit of wind, I love the way how the smoke looks wispy and blown off to the right there, off to the north. But this is about 11:15 at night. They let us stay to take a few photographs, and I was very grateful for that. Well, here's a very cool shot from Waterman, Illinois. And I think that's very appropriate because we have water, and man, we have a leader. We have a Santa Fe engine, what is that here? 677 on the point here of a consist, heading westbound past Martinson Turf. And again, a very nice reflection off the puddle. If you put your camera down close to the puddle, but don't obviously put it in the puddle, you can get shots like this, and it's really, really fun at night to light all of this up. Snow fooling, I'm telling you, you get snow and you get winter and you get a blizzard and you get strobes and a train and a depot, and you can have a lot of fun. Here's a UP manifest. It's snowing so hard I can't even read the number on that, but nevertheless, it's heading westbound past the depot here in C&W Depot here in DeKalb, Illinois, with snow coming down at the rate of 1 inch per hour. And yeah, this was really, really fun to get. Kind of slow to get there, kind of a slow drive home, but I covered my flashes or strobes up with sandwich bags, and that works just fine and protects them from the elements. At Nelson, Illinois, you can't, well, starting tomorrow, you won't be able to get this shot anymore because the new signals are going to be going up. The ones behind me in the city of Nelson, the new signals are already up. They're not operating yet, but if you want to get the searchlights, you literally don't have much time to get them. So come on down and get them. And here's a train coming underneath the coal chute, and the old signals here, searchlight signals at Nelson underneath the coal tower. Union Pacific's Troy Grove job used to have GP15s that ran on it regularly, but nevertheless, on this night, one was not in the lead, but still, I really liked how this came out. Here we are in Elva, Illinois, about 3 miles southwest of DeKalb, and you can see a couple interesting things. The old C&W depot, yes, they had one here, is on the left. You can see the grain elevator in central, and believe it or not, off to the right, you can't see it, unfortunately, but they used to have a coal tower here as well. So pretty neat. And I thought with the trees kind of making a ring around the photograph there and around the train, it provided for an interesting foreground.
2 minutes, Gilbert.
Thank you. The Chicago and Chemung Railway operates this little switcher. I want to say it's an SW1, but don't quote me on that. If somebody wants to pipe up right now, please let me know. But they turned up this engine, not only summer, but they turned up this engine as they brought back a bunch of empty grain cars, just interchanged with the Union Pacific, up in Chemung, Illinois, just a stone's throw away from Harvard and a few miles away from the Wisconsin border. I'm just going to go through the next couple here very quickly, but this is Canadian Pacific's 472 job, again at Hampshire, Illinois, in a snowstorm. the CN M338 job in another snowstorm. This time I decided, instead of getting the trees, I wanted to get the depot covered in snow. That's about to collapse, and getting the snow on the signals there was a nice touch as well. And then sometimes you just go for broke. And this is the UP Geneva sub in Geneva, Illinois. I have 4 flashes on my side of the Fox River and 2 strobes on the other side of the river, lighting up the entire bridge. All right. So before we go, and before I end my discussion, I just want to say one more thing. I know we like to shoot during the daytime, and that is really cool. Don't get me wrong. But one thing that you should consider is possibly, let's see here if I can get this to go. Yeah. One thing that I would hope you would consider is spending a little more time staying out, up to a half hour, an hour after dark, if mosquitoes don't eat you up. It's amazing some of the power that runs after dark. It's really cool. And if you get a few strobes, you can really have a lot of fun doing this. And as for me, when I come to the end of my rail fan career, if you will, or the end of my rail fanning, I'll not only be able to say those were the days, but I'll also be able to say, wow, those were the nights.
Maybe you want to go back in time, a little rewind, yeah, in your mind. 2019 pre-quarantine, remember how we rolled. We danced on the edge of a silhouette sky, and we painted our dreams in the sand 3 times, and we shouted forever like we never die. Yeah, those they were the nights. Oh, there was magic in the air, there were memories everywhere. Love was an easy bet, and we were way too young to care. We danced on the edge of the silhouette sky, and we painted our dreams in the sand 3 times, and we shouted forever like we'd never die. Yeah, those they were the nights. Yeah, those they were the nights. Yeah, those they were the nights.
Mike, I want to thank you so much for letting me be here tonight, and thank you all for your time, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the slideshows.
Thank you, Gilbert. Gilbert Sebenste, everybody. Give him a round of applause. And Gilbert does game the system. He knows what weather is coming, because, as he mentioned, he is a professional meteorologist. So there we go. Thank you, Gilbert.
You bet.
Anybody have any questions for Gilbert?
Gilbert,
Yes.
when you use the multiple flashes like that, you start with a cruise, or does that create a problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have to use strobes responsibly. I know at some point, some people like jack their strobes up 10 feet in the air with 500-watt flashes and then blast the cruise. Especially with the technology that we have these days, that you don't need to do that. Basically, what I do to keep the crews from being startled is sometimes I'll let off a flash to let out ahead of time, to let them know that, yeah, they're going to be flashed. But I also keep the strobes wherever I can, no higher than knee level. That way, yes, you do get light at the top of the cab, but in almost every case, you don't get light in the engineer or the conductor's faces. So that way they don't get startled, or it minimizes it, certainly. And I try not to do it right at intersections, if at all possible, so that they don't get blinded coming up to the intersection.
Great question, Al. Any other questions or comments for Gilbert?
Had the same question.
Okay.
And I did too.
Yeah. You do have to be careful. And my strobes are powered by 4 AA batteries, so they're not really bright. they only go up about, they only light up things about 300 feet or so, and that's about it. And actually, if you have the flashes too close to the train, it looks like a spot of light on the engine or on the cars. So what you really want to do is have them farther away so that it bathes the entire scene evenly in light. And so between keeping the flashes low and keeping them away from the train, it minimizes the impact to the crew. And I actually put that to the test. I won't say where or when, but I got a cab ride and I had the strobes used against me, and the way I do it. And I was not blinded at all. So
Good.
Yeah.
It looks like, thank you. It looks like John Egan has a question.
Yeah. Hi, Gilbert.
Hi.
I'm a follower of yours on Flickr. So I've lost many, many, many hours just looking at your photographs. So
thank you.
It was great to see them. One of my favorite pictures is your Chicago, Milwaukee and Northern SW7 that works on that Chemung line.
Thank you for correcting me. Yeah.
That is an SW7. You correctly identified it on Flickr, but tonight you asked, was it an SW1? But it's still in the CM and N paint. And I believe there was a RSD5 and an F7 also painted like that at one time. So, it's a nice survivor. Again, I enjoyed your show and I thank you for putting it together.
Thank you, John. And thank you for the correction. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that if I recall correctly, John, that engine was minted in 1951. And I'm amazed those, it's still, they still have it running, but it still runs fine. And I was fortunate to get that because almost all the time it runs at night. So the only way to get that is by, a long exposure or with strobes.
Well, you did the old gal proud, so it looks good. Thank you for that.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Yeah. Question. Did you study like Winston Link? He really pioneered this night photography, or was he an influence on you? Or
when I first got into rail fanning and first got into night photography, Winston Link was not far off my mind. I mean, we've all seen his famous, movie theater shot, and I can't remember what it's called, but the shot with the swimmers there and the train going up over a high track. And I'm like, I could never do that. And you know what the thing is that I looked at his setup, and I found his equipment list, and I saw how much it cost. And in 2021 dollars, his equipment cost $125,000. I can replicate his shot today for under $800. And so it's amazing how much the cost has come down to do something like that. And yeah, I mean, he's the king of railroad night photography. And, I'm just little old me, but if I can get anywhere close to what he's done, I would consider myself successful. I don't think I'm there yet, but yes, I am absolutely influenced by what he did and the impact he made on night photography in railroading.
Thank you for the question, Robert. And Gilbert, another advantage you have is you do not have to buy flash bulbs.
Oh, well, not necessarily. One night I got a shot. I didn't have time to show this picture, but it was a shot of an Illinois Central engine leading a train across Rockford. And the grain elevator that I lit up with it is a little dark. That's because about 10 minutes earlier, a killdeer, a bird, got mad at my flash and attacked it, knocked it over, and broke the flash. So sometimes you do have to buy more strobes. Now, in this case, believe it or not, the flash survived, but the clamp, which held it onto the tripod, did not.
Amazing. All right, time for one more question. Anybody? Well, we got to move on then. Thank you, Gilbert. Appreciate it.
Thank you.